All right, guys, we have a new set of notes, and students, because they were at school on Friday, have already seen a little bit of this lecture. And so, B students that are at home today, this will help get you caught up to roughly where they are. And so we're starting a new unit once you're done with your unit exam on Tuesday. We're starting Unit 2, which is all about the integumentary system. And the first learning target has to do with the layers of skin. And so hopefully at this point you have your notes packet either pulled up and you've made a copy on Google Docs, or you've printed it out and you're ready to take notes by hand. If for some reason you prefer taking notes by hand, but you do not have a printer, it is fine to either pause on this, and you'll have to do a little bit of extra work tomorrow, but I will give you a copy of this notes packet in class on Tuesday if you cannot physically print it off. However, if you have the means to print it off or even just handwrite it and transfer it later, the content here will be essential when it comes to picking up tomorrow after your test. We will probably have about 15 minutes of continued lecture, and so that will pick up where this leaves off. And so make sure that you are responsible for this material and that you are taking these notes. But if for some reason you can't print it off and you would like a print off, I'll have that for you Tuesday in class. Okay, a quick overview when it comes to the structure of LT1, layers of skin. You have three primary layers, and you've probably heard of these words. You can see them in the diagram. The epidermis right here is the top layer that makes contact with the outside world. The dermis is a very large layer here sandwiched in the middle, and the hypodermis sits below. So as we talk about these layers, we will talk about them in order from superficial to deep. In terms of general functions of the integumentary system, there are several. And so in this section of your notes, I would write small. If you're typing, it's no problem. The primary function of the integumentary system is often seen or said as protection, and that is true. However, I want to be specific on how your skin and aspects of your integumentary system offer protective functions. So the first thing is that your skin acts to protect you by way of a chemical barrier that is called the acid mantle. And so you have skin secretions that will make the surface of your skin slightly acidic. Now, if you remember the pH scale, 0 to 14, 7 in the middle is relatively neutral. So you can see in this diagram, the acid mantle is not making your skin so acidic, but it is dropping the pH slightly. And so that prevents bacteria and other pathogens from being able to colonize our skin. And so by way of the acid mantle, our skin offers a protective chemical barrier. We also produce something called melanin, and that is a pigment, a little molecule that pigments our skin. And really the purpose, so like that's why when you go out in the sun, your skin gets a little bit darker or perhaps even a little bit pink if you don't produce as much melanin. But this is actually a chemical that's attempting to protect the nucleus of every one of our skin cells when we, our epidermal skin cells, as we go out into the sun. That UV light from the sun can damage the DNA that exists inside the nucleus. And so melanin is produced and sort of laid around and over top of the nucleus to act as a little bit of a barrier to protect that DNA. And so melanin is another chemical barrier that offers protection in our skin. Our skin is a physical barrier. So you've probably heard it said that your skin is your largest organ, and that is true. It is one continuous sheet surrounding your body, protecting and holding you together. It offers a physical barrier to things that would scrape or poke or like prick your skin. We have several layers that are somewhat durable. Now, you know that you get cuts a lot, but just as an entity, a physical barrier does exist. This diagram, I'll say for just a second, this comes from the Body Worlds exhibit that is an art exhibit that exists even still. It tours all over the world, but this is a cadaver, someone that donated themselves specifically to this purpose. And this cadaver has been plastinated, which is a unique process that a couple of guys figured out how to do, that essentially turns your body into a polymer, a plastic. And so once you are plastinated, your tissues are preserved and the body can be dissected out and posed in artful ways. And so here is this man holding his skin. It's a very interesting exhibit if you ever get the opportunity to visit one, whether it's the entire exhibit or it's a smaller portion. About 7 years ago, a portion of the exhibit came to the Louisville Science Center. It's a very, very interesting blend of art and science. Last thing in protection, your skin acts as a biological barrier, which means that there are cells within your skin that can function, that the cells are the living components of the biological barrier that activate our immune system. And so protection is offered then by proxy by our immune system. Second function of the integumentary system is body temperature regulation. And so you know that you have a variety of things embedded in your skin, or at least hopefully you will by the time we're done with this learning target. You have sweat glands, you have oil glands, but that is less related to body temp regulation. You have muscles, and then you have blood vessels that are at the shallowest level called capillary beds just under the surface of our skin. So here you can see a capillary bed coming off of a larger vessel, and that's in the dermal layer, which is pretty close to the surface, the epidermis, and then the surface of our skin. And so these things work together to help regulate body temperature. When it is cold, your sweat glands turn off, right? So you do not need to secrete sweat when you are cold. You do not need that cooling effect. Your muscles will start to contract. And so you have muscles that sit just below this hypodermal layer. You also have little tiny muscles that are attached to every hair follicle. And so those muscles will contract and generate heat. And then the vessels, these blood vessels, will actually constrict. And by constricting, it is reserving or keeping in the heat that exists within your circulatory system. When you get hot, all of those things that I just said pretty much do the reverse. So your sweat glands turn on, you get the benefit of sweat and then evaporative cooling, which cools you down. Your muscles will relax and stop contracting, which reduces heat being produced by things within your skin. And then your blood vessels, including your capillary beds, will dilate or get larger, which brings blood closer to the surface of your skin, which then allows that heat to radiate out. It's also why when you get hot, you flush, your face turns red. That vasodilation is bringing blood to the surface of your skin. It looks one way to us, but really functionally, it's attempting to make us cooler, to cool us down. And here you can see sort of those aspects. Heat is retained in your body when your blood vessels are constricted, when you're cold, and then heat is released in your body or off of your body when your vessels are dilated and you are hot. A third function of the integumentary system is sensation. And so we'll talk about several types of receptors that exist within our skin that funnel information to the nervous system, things that let us detect actually touch, but also things like pressure and vibration and stretch. And so you have lots of receptors embedded that will provide sensation. The fourth function that we need to talk about are metabolic needs. So your skin helps make things that are needed by the rest of your body. This is called biosynthesis, and two really great examples are vitamin D and hydrocortisone. So vitamin D is something that your skin can produce when it is in the presence of UV light. So you do need to have access to sun or UV light, but from there your skin takes it and creates vitamin D. A blood reservoir is another function of our integumentary system. And so here is another picture from that same exhibit that I was talking about. This is a picture of a cardiovascular system, particularly an arterial system, including, so this heart, here's your aorta, and it includes all of the little capillary beds. So all of these little fuzzy frayed things, these are capillary beds that exist within your skin and your tissues and your organs. So 5% of your overall blood volume exists in these dermal capillary beds. A sixth function of your integumentary system is excretion. And so by releasing things like sweat, we can purge a little bit of nitrogen. And so whether that's in the form of urea or ammonia or uric acid, we are able to excrete nitrogen. Sweat really is just a dilute form of urine, which might gross you out. However, it does help us purge specifically nitrogen. When it comes to the layers of skin, we are going to address in the epidermal layer, the top layer, we're going to address or encounter several different cell types. And so I want to show you the 4 types of cells, and then we will pause on our notes and be caught up for in-class lecture on Tuesday. This diagram you will get very, very, very familiar with. So over here in this diagram, all of this that is sort of yellow looking blobs, these are all cells. Now the cells are big and squishy down here, and as you move up, 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 they get flat and compact. These cells, everything that's yellow here, exists within the epidermis. And so that tiny little layer called the epidermis that we saw in the first diagram actually has lots of additional layers within. But the cells that exist here in this picture are the things that we're going to talk about. So everything here in yellow, plus the gray blobs that we see, this purple sort of spiky looking thing, and then this blue structure. Those are the cell types. So the first cell type, everything that you see that is kind of a yellowish color or a golden color is called a keratinocyte. So keratinocytes are the primary cell type of the epidermis. They produce a protein called keratin, which allows for the epidermis to have some unique properties like stretch and makes them pretty strong. Keratin is also found in our hair and nails, and so if that gives you an indication of strength of the protein, and that can maybe help you to see the stretch, durability, protection aspect of a keratinocyte. So even though the keratinocytes are different shapes, everything that you see here that is sort of a golden color is a keratinocyte. They start big and blobby, and then as they work their way up and eventually off of our body, they get squished down and compacted, but they're all keratinocytes. Melanocytes make a pigment called melanin that we talked about under the protective function just a second ago. So that melanin is responsible for the color of our skin. There are a couple of different kinds of melanin that get produced that we'll talk about. But here you see the melanocytes, the gray structures in this diagram. So keep in mind, you'll see keratinocyte, melanocyte, anything that ends in a CYTE, site, is a cell. And so the keratinocyte is the cell that makes keratin. The melanocyte is the cell that makes melanin. Don't get these words confused. If it ends in cyte, it is a cell. Here is a Langerhans cell. That is the really big blue structure. This is our connection to the immune system. And so we'll talk about the Langerhans cell specifically when we talk about this layer of the epidermis that it exists within. And our last cell type is the Merkel cell, and that is this kind of pink fuchsia spiky looking cell way down here at the bottom. So Merkel cells are connected to the end of a sensory nerve cell. And so here is that sensory nerve ending. And because of that connection, Merkel cells are cells that are not technically in the nervous system, but they do detect sensitivity. And so ultimately we can detect some sensation as a result of this Merkel cell being stimulated. All right, those are the 4 cell types. You will come back in class on Tuesday. If you're a B student, you're watching this, you're coming back on Tuesday. You're going to first take your Unit 1 test, which took about 30-ish minutes for our A-Day students on Friday. And then we will pick back up in our notes here at the section marked epidermis. But you are done for today taking notes on LT1.